Good morning, Burnout Basketball Podcast fans. I am excited to be here talking to you all or talking to myself while you all are listening, however you want to take that. And if you're not listening to this in the morning, then good afternoon to you. And if you're listening to it at night, then well, good night. Regardless, today's going to be an exciting episode where we talk about all of the free agency moves that have been happening, some of the signings, some of the trades, some of the talk about the outlook in the East and what's going on there, how the Heat are feeling through all of this. Because, of course, at the end of the day, this is primarily a Heat basketball podcast. And I apologize if you heard my cat meowing down there for a moment. But that's all we're going to be talking about for the most part. There's no guest today, it's just me flying solo. We're going to be getting to that all very quickly. But first, I did want to say, if you've been enjoying it, if you've been listening, and if you're still here listening, I'm assuming you're enjoying it. I don't know why you'd be hate watching me. But if you are, regardless, if you could just go and leave a rating, a review, 5 stars, even 4 stars, I'll take that. But it really does help in terms of SEO and things of that nature to get this podcast out to maybe more listeners, to more people who might be interested. So I'd appreciate that. I do intend to continue creating these episodes, growing, talking about the sport in the way that we all love, and sharing that all with you. So I'd appreciate it if you all did it. Thank you very much. We'll get to it, to the episode right now, right after the intro music. Wow. So there have been a flurry of moves, of trades, of signings that have been happening. There's a whole lot going on. Meanwhile, the Heat not been doing a whole lot of things. We'll talk about how we feel about that in a little bit, but just want to kind of recap some of the stuff that's going on, especially in terms of the East, just because, of course, it's where we play, and we'll be seeing how that's going to affect our roster moving forward. We're going to be doing a little bit of a summer league talk, not all too much just yet as we wait for that to actually get started here in a couple of days. But with that being said, as we look at some of the moves that have been happening in the East, it's interesting. The landscape has changed somewhat. I still think, and most people would agree, you'd still think it's kind of a weak East for the most part. There are wins to be had, which is good or bad for us, depending on how many wins you want the Heat to have, seeing as we do have our own pick going in 2026. I am of the opinion that the more wins, the better. We'll see what happens. And if we do lose, then cool, we get the added bonus of having a higher draft pick. Hopefully, you never even know with the lottery this time around. You saw in the draft this past time that as many people will complain that it was rigged, but regardless of that stuff, Mavs getting the first pick and they were in the play-in or just about in the play-in, and even the Spurs getting the second pick. There's just a lot of room for, with how the percentages are balanced, for bad teams that were the worst in the league to fall out of the top four, and for somewhat okay teams to fall into the top four. So you don't want to like tank and then you get rewarded with nothing. And then what was the point? You just have a bunch of disgruntled players. You have a fan base that's not very happy because at the end of the day, we can all say we want tanking and we want to tank for a higher pick, but it's going to make for a miserable viewing experience. No one's going to be going to the arena. No one's going to be tuning into games and you're getting blown out by 20 or 30 every night unless you're doing some kind of competitive tank. But even then, it still hurts when your team is in it every game and then you lose. And I can't imagine Spo ever intentionally losing games. I just don't think that's a thing that's going to happen. So I wouldn't count on it. I'd expect for us to try our hardest. And with that, who are we going to be trying our hardest against? That's a good question. Some of the top dogs in the East have definitely shifted around. The Cavs will still be a very good regular season team and possibly a very good playoff team. It's discounted that they had a bunch of injuries going into the playoffs after in the second round. The first round a little bit against us. Not that they needed their full healthy squad to beat us in the first round, obviously, but they did have injuries going into the second round, which could have led to their loss. I'm not taking anything away from the Pacers, but just saying they weren't fully healthy. No one is, but they even had to sit players like in game two. Darius Garland was hobbled, so even Donovan Mitchell was having injury issues. They're you can't look at their season and not think about those things. So the Cavs will still be very good. The Celtics, on the other hand, who was kind of their running mate, or if anything, the Cavs was the running mate to the Celtics. They sold off all their players pretty much, not all, but they've let go of Drew Holiday. They let go of Kristaps Porzingis. They let go of Luke Cornett. They received Anthony Simons, George Niang, Luca Garza, Josh Minnow. Never even heard of Josh Minnow. Maybe that's just me being uneducated. But point being is that they're going to be much worse. Their roster looks very different than it was. Of course, they still, as of right now, have Derek White and Jaylen Brown, but Jason Tatum's going to be out for what most would agree the whole year. And even if he came back early, I wouldn't rush him into playing or rush his minutes, especially if it's a dead season like it is. So that's a whole lot of losses taken or added to the Celtics, and that means wins that are going to get spread out to the other teams that play them, to primarily the teams in the East as we play them more. That's interesting as to where those wins go. I'd imagine even in our case, I think we didn't win all that much against the Celtics in the regular season last year. I'd expect at least another win or two, maybe. You never know. Obviously, it depends on what our team looks like as we get to those games. Sometimes we have injuries. Sometimes they have injuries, yada yada. Moving on, the Hawks have made some pretty interesting moves. They're going to be better. I think people are kind of sleeping on them a little bit. They've added Joe Ingles. I'm sorry, I'm looking at their trade with the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves added Joe Ingles. They lost Nickeil Alexander to the Hawks, and on the Hawks, they now have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, and that Kristaps Porzingis trade, which Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think, is a pretty great player for them to have. He's not a starter. Maybe he'll start for them, but he's not, he's not that, in terms of impact player, he's not that far ahead of some of the other players who are on their roster, but he's a very good, solid piece for them to have. He played pretty great in the playoffs. I think it was maybe not the smartest thing to have him covering his cousin, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for their series, just seeing as, yeah, he might know the tendencies, but Shai also knows how to play against him just as much, and Shai is the better player, obviously. That being an insult to Nickeil. Luke Kennard is a decent player, and then Kristaps Porzingis, that's the big question mark. If he's healthy for the Hawks, it's going to be a huge addition. He can space the floor, he can play defense really well, but the health is just a giant question mark when it comes to him. He had some unknown illness that was keeping him out of the roster since I think like March of last season, and they never revealed what was going on with him. In fact, I think they were pretty open about the fact that they weren't sure what illness he was suffering from. So, I mean, I hope he gets better. I hope whatever it is not serious. I hate to see a player's career be derailed by an illness, especially. We've seen that with Chris Bosh from the Miami Heat perspective when he got those blood clots, just as, he was going to be the prime facilitator, prime player on our team. He got the blood clots and it sidelined him for the rest of his career. It took him out. So, hoping that Kristaps Porzingis is healthy, and if he is healthy, the Hawks are going to be a pretty decent team. They're going to look good. I think they'll be winning more games. They lost Clint Capella, Caris LeVert, Larry Nance Jr., George Niang, and Terrence Mann. Decent players, all of which in their own right, but I think the additions of Nickeil and Kristaps, as well as their younger players developing, is going to be more of the story for the Hawks, really. I know Zach Lowe and a few other people, a few other reporters around in the Ringer and other networks are pretty excited about what they've been doing. So that's one team that got better. Another team that got better would be the Magic. Magic are definitely going to be winning a few more games this season. They had a great season last year, but they were injuries from hell. They had players who were constantly being sidelined. I think they had like 3 players with the same abdominal injury, which is extremely rare. So just the fact that those players will be healthy is already an indicator that they're going to be much better going into next season, and that's not even taking into account there's development that happens when their best player, Paolo Banchero, is still very young. Love watching him play. He's awesome. But then on top of that, they did make a big swing for Desmond Bane. They traded, I think, 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane, or not the best picks for Desmond Bane. He can space the floor for them. He could play defense. He has playoff experience. I think he's going to be a great addition to that team. He's young. He fits their timeline. So just in general, they got better. One of their worst things was 3-point shooting, and they just added a shooter who can also play defense and who's not a ball hog, but can also play on ball if they need him to. So that is exciting for them. Not in the East, but did have to mention that Houston is just having an incredible offseason. They lost Dillon Brooks and Jalen Green, and then they gained Clint Capella, Kevin Durant, and Dorian Finney-Smith, which is Incredible. And then on top of that, they were able to re-sign Steven Adams, Aaron Holiday, Jeff Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Jay Sean Tate, and Fred VanVleet. So they're bringing back a ton of their roster, bringing back everybody, and all they had to do was lose Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green to get Clint Capella, Kevin Durant, and Dorian Finney-Smith. They are going to be very scary. I wouldn't say they're the favorites to make the finals just because of what, OKC did and OKC exists. You have to give them their flowers and their respect. But man, I would not want to play them in a series. It seemed like their biggest issue in the playoffs was they didn't have a go-to scorer, especially when things get tight in late playoff games. And now they have Kevin Durant, who's probably the best isolation scorer, maybe just best pure scorer that we've ever seen, definitely of the modern era. So very, very exciting for them. And then last but not least, and this kind of starts bringing us back into some Heat stuff, I did want to mention the Bucks that are making some interesting moves, decisions. They stretched and waived Damian Lillard's contract, which is a huge contract. He was still under contract for a while. I don't, I maybe I'll be cold hearted here a little bit. I guess with the news that's come out, I'm not going to sound cold hearted at all, but people were kind of saying like they feel bad for Dame, that this was a mean move by the Bucks. I don't really get that. They had no choice. If they wanted to keep Giannis, which they do apparently, and Giannis apparently wants to stay there, at least as of right now. They were in a tough spot because Dame was eating up so much of their roster cap that they weren't going to be able to build anything around Giannis, and he's not worth anything in a trade, obviously, when he's 35-year-old coming off an MCL injury. They were forced to have to do something. So they stretched and waived him. He's still getting all his money, all of it. And now he has the freedom to choose where he wants to play when he is healthy. And he doesn't even really have to take money into account because he's still getting paid that salary from the Bucks. So he can come on a much cheaper deal to whatever team he wants to play. Some people are rumoring back home to Portland for some reason. There's interest from Golden State, and there's obviously interest from the Miami Heat to get him. When it first happened, there were some reports that Giannis was unhappy about this and that Dame was caught by surprise. I think a lot of that is just people showing face and trying to make it seem like, especially in Giannis' case, trying to make it seem like he supports his teammate and wanted him there. But he wasn't going to be there. He was injured, and now it gave them room to make a big signing, which was for them Miles Turner. He agreed to a 4-year deal with the Bucks. That is pretty big for them. He's he's been in trade rumors for forever, which is funny because this season was probably the first that he wasn't in trade rumors, and then he got traded. But he could space the floor. He could play pretty good D. He played well in the playoffs. He had some games where he obviously didn't play well in the playoffs. That happens. He's not your A player. He's a B or a C on your team. B option, a C option on the team. But they have Giannis, so that's fine. They could play big. It lets Giannis not have to necessarily play center. He can kind of free roam a little bit. It's also a gut punch for the Pacers just because that was kind of their big rival. They played each other a bunch, and now he's there. Also understood from the Pacers standpoint, with the way that the luxury tax works nowadays, you kind of want to be able to dip out of it whenever you get a chance because the penalties for staying in the luxury tax for too many years in a row involves losing first round picks and things of that nature. So every team is kind of finding out their way to navigate around this new cap structure, which that includes the Heat. We're also having to make some decisions regarding our finances that don't put us in a position where we're caught paying the tax too early. And then when we actually want to make some winning moves, we're going to be getting those penalties. So, we're just keeping that in mind as we're looking at what the Heat are doing. It's interesting for sure. And just to close off the Bucks, they did re-sign Kevin Porter Jr., they re-signed Bobby Portis, Taurean Prince, Jericho Sims, Gary Trent Jr., and they also added Vasily Micic and Gary Harris, both of which are, they're decent players. I think the biggest addition there is, of course, the Miles Turner addition. And they lost Pat Connaughton. They've lost Damian Lillard, obviously. And sadly, they've lost Brook Lopez. He's went to the Clippers. He was, he's loved by them, but he was getting older and he wasn't playing the best. So they needed to make more room to try to build around Giannis if they're planning on winning now. I don't think it's going to do anything for them. I mean, this season, I think they'll win more games probably as long as everyone is healthy. I think they're still not a team you want to play in the playoffs, but that's primarily because of Giannis. You don't ever want to see Giannis in the playoffs. So, I'm I'm still looking towards Giannis's free agency in a couple years, 2 years from now, and I'm still looking towards maybe if he ends up declaring for or wanting a trade if things aren't going well. I don't think that's going to happen this season as much anymore, just because of the moves they made. He's a competitive guy. I think he's going to want to stick it out too, unless it goes absolutely terribly. So we will see about that. There's a bunch of other moves that have happened. Those are the biggest ones I'd say that are sticking out to me. Then as far as the Heat moves go, we've been a little sleepy. I've been seeing the sleepy Pat memes, but so far all we have done is we did make sure to re-sign Davion Mitchell on a 2-year deal, which chef's kiss, love that. Davion Mitchell is a bulldog. I mean, even in this most recent Mind the Game episode where Kevin Durant is sitting with LeBron and Steve Nash, they're talking about like smaller guards and what they have to do to stick out in the league. And one of the first people Kevin Durant mentions is Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell is great. He's going to do good things for us. And I'm excited again to see him in another season with the Heat, another season gelling together. But the sad news was we kind of departed, moved on from Duncan Robinson. Happy birthday, Duncan, one last time. We will miss you. He is the Heat's leading 3-point shooter, like in franchise history. He's made the most 3-point shots. This was an undrafted guy, back to what we were talking about last episode, who really proved himself on a team. He played unselfishly, never really threw any fits, was not a locker room issue, seems just like an overall great guy. I understand why we've moved on from him. He's a little bit older. He had a big salary. We want to kind of continue letting our young players play, and it would have been unfair to Duncan to have maybe some young players take his spot when he had been on this team for so long and played so well for us for so long. But as much as I can understand it logically why we moved on from Duncan, and happy for that in some sense, I am still saddened just because he given us some great memories. There's been games where Duncan's on a freaking scorcher, and it saved our hides. The Bam and him 2-man game was always super exciting. I love those random times where nobody expected Duncan to take them off the dribble. The next thing you know, he's like cutting to the lane, cutting to the basket, and scoring on a layup. He was just a really exciting player to watch play. He was like your regular everyman. I liked his podcast when it existed. I don't think it still exists. Apologies to Duncan if it does. But yeah, sad to see him go. He's going to the Pistons in a sign and trade. We got back Simone Fontecchio. Again, this is mostly just for cap space. We have to take back a salary since we're giving out one. Simone, I believe, is on an expiring contract. He's a decent 3-point shooter. He'll fill in nice. He'll definitely be a bench player, but nothing to rave about for the Heat in that sense. I think more so what the Heat are expecting to do, and that's getting to the point of this all, is just to rely on our young players and see what they do in this weak season of the East. With there's more wins to be had, there's just a kind of no one really is expecting anyone to be the front runner in the East. The Cavs, I guess, are, but no one is scared of them. I mean, even though they smacked us in the playoffs, but that all to be said, I think we can still make some moves against them. It's interesting too, as I was talking about how everyone is so excited for the Hawks because of the moves they made and that they look better, and they do look better. But we beat them in the play-in last year. I'm not scared of the Hawks. Like, even with the team we currently have now, I'm not. And that's not to say they're not better than us. They might be, and they definitely could be, but I'm not scared of them. And I think that is partially why we're in this crossroads where like 50% of fans want us to make some win now move, 50% of fans want us to blow it all up. But I don't think we know what we have yet. We've seen a lot of these players, but we've seen them all alongside Jimmy, a star who kind of rose everyone up above him, and helped everyone play better just because of his unselfish play, because of his ability to bail us out in tough spots, because of his defense, just because of his energy. So I think seeing this team with a full season together without Jimmy and seeing how they play will be important for us because it's a weaker East. So if this team is really 1 star away from winning, then we should look pretty good for a while, right? If you're 1 star away, you're going to look good. The way that Houston felt. I mean, I don't think we're going to be as good as Houston was, but Houston felt like they were 1 star away. They were the 2 seed in the West last year, and we were probably not as good as they were. But they felt like they were 1 star away, so they made that move for KD. And that's exactly my point. I don't think we're 1 star away. I don't think we're as good as Houston was last season. But I do think we're pretty good, and we can see how this team meshes together, how Bam and Tyler continue to grow and play together, what this rookie looks like. Can Jaime have a bounce back season? Can Jovic continue to grow? I'm really interested. The biggest things is if Tyler can play how he played before the All-Star break, and if Bam can play how he played after the All-Star break, if those two things can coalesce, if they can come together, that's going to be huge for us because Tyler was having a breakout season at the time that Bam was playing like poop, when everything was going on. And then Tyler started slumping pretty hard when Bam started coming alive. So if those two things can work out, that's a good sign for us. And then on top of that, I'm pretty high on Ware as a prospect. I think he's going to have a better second season than first season. I don't think he's going to have that sophomore slump that like Jaime Jaquez had. There might be some games maybe early on in the season where he does, but just the way that he fits into the roster, what he allows Bam to do, and we went over that in some episodes ago, just how him being on the floor allows Bam to play differently, to score more in different ways. I think it's going to be huge for us to see those players play together while we have this kind of watch out season. If we play well, again, we make it into the playoffs and we see what happens. These young players continue to get playoff experience under them. That's a win. That's good. It's good for young players to have that. It builds a culture, culture, TM, whatever. But seriously, it does help when these players are actually part of a winning team, a winning organization, and are getting those real playoff minutes. But then on top of that, if we don't do well, we have our own pick for this year. We don't have it next year. So this is the year to find out. This is the year to test things because worst case, if we're bad, we have our own pick in what everyone is claiming to be a very stacked draft. So it's exciting nonetheless just for us to see what happens and to see what kind of player we might get in the draft, or to see all this team kind of continue to play better together and to maybe play happier now that there's no drama in the locker room. Something interesting to watch out for is some people are thinking about, is there a world in which we get Lillard? Again, that wouldn't impact us this season. He's going to be rehabbing for all this season. He will be available for whoever next season. Again, so another reason why this is a tested out year, if that's something that we are eyeing. He was someone we did want. Of course, we'd be getting him on a cheaper deal, which is great because he's older now and he's coming off a pretty serious injury. But he was still playing pretty well last season before the injury. He was kind of getting back to his form. His first season in Milwaukee was pretty bad. His second season was getting back to some of those numbers. His field goal rate was kind of back at that 54.9%, just a little lower than what his averages were. His 3-point percent was pretty much back to where it's been, maybe a little lower than his peak seasons, but 37.7 from three. Of course, he hits his free throws. His assisted numbers, his catch and shoot numbers were pretty good. Just overall, his assist percentages, he was kind of a little lower than maybe where he was, but he wasn't the main facilitator as he used to be. His points per 100 shots attempted was pretty close to what it's been before, and that's again on a different team with different schemes with a coach who I'd say is worse than Spo. Not that I'm not trying to shit on Doc right now, but that's has to be accounted for. But he's had worse seasons even while he was in Portland, so he was looking all right. He was looking pretty good up until the blood clots and then up until the actual injury. So if he can come back, if he can be decent, if he can play pretty well for us, maybe he's not a starter by the time he is 36, 37 years old, but just even a bench guy like Damian Lillard who has the playoff experience that he has, I think is pretty great. And then keeping our eye out on Giannis, right? Keeping our eye out on him. He likes Dame. They have a good relationship. So maybe just by picking him up, paying him while he's injured, and hopefully the Bucks continuing to not be very good is the goal. If they, get knocked out in the playoffs early, then that's Giannis looking towards other teams, looking towards brighter horizons, and maybe the Heat are somewhere where he can want to be, especially with a friend of his, with an organization he respects. He respects Bam. So we'll see what happens with that. It would be interesting. I'm not counting on it, and I don't think anybody should be counting on it. It's kind of like hoping for a miracle. If miracles happen, great, but if they don't, then it happens. You just got to keep living your life the way it's going. So all that to say is we will see what happens with Lillard with Giannis. I kind of wanted to wait to record this to see if there was any more action with Lillard, but I think the free agency moves are starting to slow down. I've also been a little sick, not that any of you care, and I mentioned it before, but that was holding me out a bit. So kind of perfect timing. I got to wait for some of these moves to actually happen first and foremost. So again, just recapping, there's wins to be had in the East. This is a rebuilding season for us, just to see what we have, see how this rookie plays, see how our team grows together. Can Hero continue to play well? Can Bam continue to play better? Something that even came to mind, I almost forgot here, but you know, it's interesting when you look at the season the Pacers had, which I think most people would say took everyone by surprise, led by a Tyrese Halliburton. Of course, they made moves with Pascal. Of course, they have a very good team around Tyrese, but people weren't really sure what Tyrese was or is. I mean, even his peers voted him most overrated, which I think was insane. But needless to say, he wasn't seen as this MVP candidate or top 10 player in the league. He wasn't until recently. He did have that stretch at the beginning of last season, I think, pre-injury, where people were like, is Tyrese an MVP candidate? It was like a couple weeks there, and then he got injured, and when he came back, he wasn't the same. Um, but it shows that he was able to kind of be trusted and grow into this role that has increased and has just proven what a baller he is. But I was looking back just 2 years ago in the 2023 season, or I guess almost 3 years ago now, 2023, 2024 season. This is on Hoops Hype, where they've checked the rankings of players on different sites and their own rankings, right? Tyrese, according to Hoops Hype, they had him ranked 19th in the league. ESPN had him as 21. The Ringer had him at 23. Bleacher Report had him at 33. CBS Sports had him at 23. So, that's just kind of where they had him around. And overall, Hoops Hype had him at 23 based on all these kind of numbers that have been listed. But when you look at what Hoops Hype had Bam at, Bam was at 22, one slot ahead of Tyrese Halliburton as an impact player. Hoops Hype themselves had him at 28, so they actually had him further down than Tyrese. Maybe they knew something that we didn't. But ESPN had Bam at 16, The Ringer had Bam at 21, Bleacher Report had him at 27, and CBS had him at 20. So pretty much everyone besides Hoops Hype had Bam higher than Tyrese Halliburton. I know he plays completely differently. He might not be as good as Halliburton anymore. I think as of right now, as of this moment, Halliburton deserves the right to be considered better than Bam with what he did in these playoffs. I mean, it was thrilling. I think that's the best way to put it. It was thrilling to watch, but there is still that potential for Bam. Bam is still a great impact player. We've seen him in the playoffs play very, very well. And I think what we've learned is, more importantly than just trusting your player, which is incredibly important, is the Pacers leaned into a style that Tyrese really allowed them to have. And if we're able to further lean into Bam and to maximize him in the ways that he needs to be maximized, and that could involve, again, having some bigs next to Bam so he's not our defensive anchor at all points in time, and allows him to be able to have a little bit more energy on the offensive end. I mean, recently there was a clip going around of Michael Beasley being interviewed, mentioning that the only player to beat him one-on-one ever was Bam Adebayo, and how he thinks that if Bam could take 8 more shots a game, he'd be averaging plus 30 points, like 30 plus points a game on a good efficiency. Beasley is funny as hell, but I mean, I could see it. Bam has a really good jumper. Bam plays well. Bam played more in the Olympics than Tyrese did. Injury could have been a part of that. But Bam is just a really, really, really good player. And I think us Heat fans take him for granted because a lot of the things that he does doesn't jump off the page. It's a lot of defense. It's a lot of just like clean jumpers. It's a lot of facilitating the offense. But he's an athletic freak. And if we have a good way to facilitate for him to get better shots, to get better looks at the rim, I think he can have a great season this season. I'm interested to see it. So, that to be said, let's just hope for that. Again, we're making some moves, hopefully, to get rid of Terry Rozier. Even though he's been cleared from those betting allegations, he still wasn't great for us. We have one of the best cap guys in the league, and Andy Ellisberg, who's been running our finances for a long time. He's the reason the Jimmy trade was able to happen when no one expected it to ever happen. So I would just trust what the Heat are doing in terms of that, and in terms of making these cap moves to maybe get us under the cap space, the first apron right now. Looking forward to Summer League, and I'll make this pretty quick. I just wanted to look up trends of Summer League performances to see how it translated to the real NBA, to the regular season. And overall, it's really hard to take anything from it. I think most importantly, you're just looking to see how players fit into a scheme. I mean, even calling a Summer League team a team is a stretch of that word, just because these players come together for a couple of weeks. You have a lot of undrafted guys who are fighting for their spot to be in the league. So, like, they might be hearing from their coaches that you just have to be unselfish and do the things that makes the team win, but they're looking to score. They're looking to get their stats up, obviously, because they're desperate. They want to get signed, and that's no offense to them, it makes sense. So, it's hard for a team to gel in the way that it would in a regular season game when, you have those practices. This is kind of rushed together very fast. And when you looked at some prior summer leagues just to see, players who did well, who ended up not being great, or players who did bad, who ended up being great. Trae Young was terrible in summer league, and I mean he's a pretty good player. He's had some good playoff success. Um, Josh Selby, not a lot of people know that name. He won co-MVP of summer league with Lillard one year, and then he was out of the league in about 2 years. Kevin Knox balled out in summer league, and someone that you necessarily care for. I think it is interesting when you look at second year players. That's where you kind of hope more for second year players to stand out amongst the crowd just because they've had that full season of NBA reps. So I'm really looking to Ware more than anything to play well in summer league, to maybe get shut down from summer league and not play the whole thing. We will see, but excited to see him do that. Like Jabari Smith Jr., when his first year in summer league, he was all right. And then the second year he balled out in 2 games, and they're like, okay, well, we don't need him to keep playing summer league. He's obviously good enough. I saw, and I don't want to steal quotes. I'll never steal quotes. I'm a Reddit user, so I'm gonna attribute it to Reddit user MTOCZ. This quote: "The purpose of summer league isn't to find out who can play in the NBA. It's to find out who can't." And I think that pretty much, boom, hit the nail on the head. It's true. We're not looking to see. It'd be fun if KJ or Ware has this crazy game, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're going to be doing in the regular season of the NBA. It could, but it's not an indicator of it when you look back at prior summer league performances. You're just looking to see, how is KJ looking in the offense? Is he feeling good in the flow? Are some of those turnovers happening? And if they're happening, is it because he's making passes to players that he maybe thought were somewhere, but they're not? Or is he getting ripped off the ball? Those are kind of the things I'm looking at. I'm looking at how's his defense holding up against the summer league. Is he able to defend these worse players than he would be playing against in the league? Those are just the small things I'm looking for. We did win the summer league championship last year. Who knows? Maybe we win it again this year, whatever that counts for with KJ, with Ware. So we'll see how that goes. I'd tamper your expectations when you're looking at summer league play, good or bad. If he's really bad, he could still be good in the NBA. If he's really good, he could still be bad in the NBA. It's more so just to see the small things, and we'll be watching those games and looking just to see those standout moments and what sticks out to us. I'm most excited for his playmaking and his defense, even though the playmaking can be hard when you're in a system that you're not used to. And another topic just on KJ to round this all out before we get out of here. Brendan Tobin from Tobin and Leroy did mention that historically, Spo has been more keen on playing rookie guards than bigs. That's to be said that a lot of people around the league are wondering, or around the Heat are wondering, is KJ even going to get to play? Like, Ware was shut down for most of the season because, there's people ahead of him and whatnot. That might still happen to KJ, it might not, but just historically, at least Brendan Tobin did that deep dive, that Spo has been more keen on playing rookie guards than he has been on playing rookie bigs. And I hope so. I hope that he does play KJ early so he can kind of make those mistakes with the ball in his hand, so he can grow, so that by the end of the season, he's maybe a much better product than he is at the beginning of the season. I think he needs that on-court time to really learn. At the end of the day, I trust whatever decision Spo makes. Obviously, I'm not one of these Heat fans who changes my mind every couple of days and wants to trade Spo or fire Spo. I think that's ridiculous. We have probably the best coach in the whole NBA, who's like the most sought-after coach. So let's not do that. Let's just trust him. But I expect that we will be seeing a lot of KJ in the regular season, and I expect for him to have a decent summer league, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how he does in summer league. It's more so just how he looks in summer league rather than the actual performance itself, if you catch my drift. So this was just a quick episode. Just wanted to get this all out here before summer league starts and before the rest of free agency continues. Maybe by the time this drops, Damian Lillard has already signed with the team, or Giannis has already requested a trade. Who knows? Things move fast in the NBA. But I just want to, I understand the frustrations of Heat fans, and I want to say that I get it. I'm frustrated too. Like, we've had such high highs and we're not anywhere near them anymore. But I don't think we're one piece away, and I do think that sometimes the most valuable thing for a team to do is just to sit back and wait and to evaluate, to see what players you have and how good really are they when the ball is in their hands more of the time. And that's what we're going to get this season. So I think it's just a practice in patience for us as Heat fans, as the Heat organization goes through this transition period. I expect for us to get back to those high highs maybe in a couple of years, maybe next year, maybe 2 years, who knows? I don't, we were counted out after LeBron left. We were counted out after Chris Bosh had the blood clots, and we've found ways to make it back. We have found ways to get there over and over and over again throughout our team's history. I have no reason to assume that we won't be able to do that again. We're just frankly spoiled because of all the finals runs, all the deep playoff runs that have had. So let's just be patient, take it easy for a year, see what happens, see how our players look. Thank you. This was an exciting day. I'm still not feeling great. I'm sure you could maybe tell it in my voice, but I appreciate all of you who tuned in. And stay dry out there. Training pretty hard in Miami, Florida right now. Peace out.